Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I'm Kevin Ferguson. I've got Zelim Nel, Z.
Hi Kev.
Mark Keohane.
How's it, Kev?
Guys, I told you the Boks were going to lose.
You did, and you said by 12 points, record breaking.
Incredible.
Unbelievable, eh?
Incredible.
I saw that on your Facebook page, like with about 2 minutes after the game.
Yeah.
For all those people that want us to cop it this week, fair enough. Yeah, we get it wrong. We don't always get it right, and well done to New Zealand. I think the downside to well done to New Zealand is that also well done to Foster, which probably means that he keeps his job and New Zealand remain leaderless up to the World Cup, because it wasn't the best display by the Boks. Left me asking more questions than I could answer. But New Zealand manned up, and this illusion that Ellis Park is a fortress is bullshit. How many games have we won there in the last 6 against New Zealand?
Well, we've won one in the last 5. Pat Lambie's 82nd minute penalty. They've won 4 out of the 5, and that 12-point differential is their biggest ever. New Zealand physically really did play the most direct game I've seen them play for 2 years. But we weren't at the races. My God, mentally it wasn't the same side that played in Nelspruit. Our swarming defence wasn't there. As you mentioned, Zels, as well, in part, we lose a winner and we put our best 13 at win, and we put our 15 at 12, and we put our 12 at 13. So that it was just very dysfunctional, and then you've got Willemse and Pollard interchanging as well. So there wasn't that swarming rush defence there. Mohanga, he was always going to play with variation. We said that the key was that Mohanga's rendered powerless, as France did against him, if the pack gets stuffed up.
Yeah.
But the pack fronted physically, and again asked questions of a Springboks side that post the World Cup win has been hit and miss. They are brilliant the one week and very soft the next week. They've won, take Georgia out of it, that first one, they've won 10 out of 17, which is 59% win rate, which is not acceptable. No. They were outstanding in that second British and Irish Lions test to win 27-9. It was a scramble for that third one. Magnificent in Nelspruit, pretty awful at Ellis Park. So
yeah.
Rassie Rasmussen, there's a clip that he posted himself that the key post-World Cup was consistency. Could they go out and do what New Zealand did between 2011 and 2015 and win 90% of their games? And they emphatically have failed to do so. On social media, people keep on saying, stuff you, what do you know? They won the World Cup, they won the Lions Series. But they're getting it wrong 40% of the time. 41% of the time they're getting it wrong. So the selections aren't bulletproof. Their thinking is not without fault.
Yeah.
So questions have to be asked, and it's again, there was potentially logic to the way they picked their starting lineup, but it didn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah.
In the context of where we hadn't played. Dwayne had come off an operating table. The last time he had played was the URC, and Evan Roos had really done a number on him and performed particularly well. And Evan Roos is not going to Australia, and Dwayne is. So I think that's another missed opportunity. We know what Dwayne's going to do. He's done it before over how many World Cups. I thought it was a missed opportunity to take that kid over to Australia and let him see how he plays against a hurting Wallabies.
I thought that Dwayne was nowhere in that game. Had no impact. Z?
Yeah, I mean, I love Dwayne.
Well, we all love Dwayne.
He's one of our top 5 Springboks. What frustrates me is that Dwayne's Bok career got started late because he was in this queue when it was obvious that Dwayne should have been starting in Test rugby way before he did. He had to bide his time. And now he's kind of become the blocker.
But he's a bit off the pace, let's be
honest. For a guy
honest.
like Evan Roos. So yeah, I mean, Dwayne is off the pace. He's coming back from a knee injury. He is 36 years old. You can't blame Dwayne for starting that match. Somebody picked him to start that match. It was the wrong call. Outside of a World Cup, we measure ourselves against.
There was a few wrong calls in selection, let's be honest.
Yeah, there's tons of them.
And I think the thing that's frustrating for me is, as someone asked on YouTube, who am I or what am I in terms of my nationality? Well, I was born in Wales, so my affiliation is to Wales. And then, I bought SA Rugby magazine and have lived here 26 years. So I have affinity to both teams. But I'll always cheer for Wales over South Africa when they play each other. But looking at that game, what frustrates me as a Springbok supporter was the expectations of this game. We thought that that we needed to win this game because of all the pain that New Zealand had inflicted on us, and we were capable of winning this game and should have won this game. You know, we're better than what we played on the day. The plane flying overhead, you know, all the buzz. There was every hype, and I bought into it. You know, I bought into it, completely bought into it.
I think we all bought into it because if you looked at the two team lineups, and again, if you ask me what the score would be, I'd say 12 to 18 points to South Africa.
Yeah.
I would pick 3 of those New Zealanders in the 23.
Exactly.
That's why they were 1 from 7 or 2 from
Yeah,
7.
nothing's changed from that.
I'm just so disappointed that a Springboks side that has been together for 5 years, that has won a World Cup, won a Lions Series, and won a Rugby Championship, that they couldn't mentally switch on to put the old enemy away one more time. Because had they stuck New Zealand away at Ellis Park, they would have been in disarray. What should have been the burial ground became the rebirth potentially of a New Zealand side. Because those youngsters will say, we went to the cauldron of Test rugby at altitude, and we were the ones scoring in the 81st minute. They were finished. They were out on their feet. It's such a momentum changer for the All Blacks moving forward, whether Foster stays or goes.
But could it be a false dawn, Mark?
No, but those kids who played will take heart and say, those 2 props would say, we handled the World Cup winning props. Frizzell will say, I crushed guys in contact. Mohanga would say, I controlled the game. Caleb Clark was running through us at will. Will Jordan showed his pace. So all of a sudden, we looked the vulnerable ones and then questioned the selections. Questioned who we started with, the inability to kind of just be composed. And when we got back to 23-21 on 72 minutes at Ellis Park, a great fight back, ordinarily you'd expect a home South African team at altitude to run into the 2 tries and win. Yet we were finished. Our big boys were out on their feet. And again, because the bomb squad, which would normally be introduced on 45, 50, 55, were in on 30. 35, and they just didn't have the same effect. So it's not the bomb squad per se that's the issue.
It's not the selection.
It's who makes up that bomb squad.
I think one was substituted 36 minutes. What's the point of that? I don't understand.
Well, Dwebi was substituted on 30 minutes. Yeah. And he started with a skew throw, and he ended with a skew throw, and that's when they yanked him.
But Mark,
Dwayne, 36 minutes.
That's the stuff we've been talking about, though, is that Rassie and Jacques are geniuses, but we've almost become a slave to the World Cup. We have to win the World Cup and the World Cup plan. We've almost become a slave to the building blocks to making that happen again. So in the same way, in Heineke's era, he decided at 60 minutes he's going to make substitutions to the front.
Yeah, we've become very formulaic again.
We are very formulaic now. It's the bomb squad, it's the bomb squad, it's the bomb squad, it's the bomb squad. At the end of the day, these guys seem like they're a team now where the forwards can only play for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And if something messes it up, then it's like, oh my goodness, how do we play a rugby match for 80 minutes now? What happens?
Well, and I think adding on to that point, Z, that there is a first team. There is a better team. There are better players. You know, they're not equal or
No, sure.
you can't separate them. There's a pecking order there. Thanks for that. There's a pecking order there, and it's like you've got marks that should have started. I mean, let's analyze certain things or key moments in that game. For me, it started before the whistle. I'm not a fan of Jesse Creel. I don't think he should have been on the field. Marks is arguably the best 3 players in the world. Kitsoff is arguably one of the best 3 or 5 players in the world. So you got 2 of the best players in the world that you're on the bench, starting against a game that you want to finish this team off. You want to make an emphatic statement. And you clearly saw the impact that was made from the 30-minute mark. They ran roughshod over the All Blacks for 15 to 20 minutes. Just one-way traffic. Looked dangerous every time they had the ball. And then you had one incident that was so controversial. I never complain about the referees, but I thought that this guy was 3 out of 10 at best. I don't believe there was interference, obstruction. I know you do.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge call. And I'll tell you why I felt that there was a bit of bias by the referee. It was in the first minute, our first penalty, and there's a yellow card. That was the first penalty of the game. Yellow card, danger. You know, it was clearly should have been a yellow card. But when the Springboks were on their line and pressing, he did not issue a yellow card when they infringed. And you only infringe when you're going backwards in a professional foul way. So to me, when you're not consistent, and that's all fans and all players want, is a little bit of consistency from the referee, so that when you're doing one thing down there, you're doing another thing down there. So,
look, I felt he wasn't going to do us any favors, but he also penalised them 12 times and penalised us 7. So we should have won the game.
Exactly.
You know, it's like,
Exactly.
and yes, I agree with you. Technically, you could say it's obstruction. If he had said it's not, there's nothing intentional, try stands, there would be people like me would say, I agree with that as well. But we did score straight away after that. They went 21-13 up, and we went back and scored a minute later.
Yep.
So it wasn't, and then we went 23-21 up. So the momentum never shifted away from us.
Mark, you're wrong there. I'll tell you why. The momentum shifts in that they score 3 and we have -7 off the board. That's a 10-point swing.
2 minutes later, we got that back.
Then we would have been up by 5.
Look, I thought the referee wasn't going to do us any favours, but he's not the reason we lost.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I want consistency from referees.
Sure.
You know, he was shouting at the Boks to get the ball out all the time. I didn't hear it once from, and I'm sure he did say it once, but I didn't hear it once. I didn't hear him being so vociferous with the All Blacks.
Yeah, I think he was very clear that he wasn't going to favour South Africa, despite 62,000 nutters wanting him to.
You're right, Mark. They didn't win because of the referee, but they didn't have any help from him.
Look, the only consistency I want from a referee is that the Boks win every week. But it hasn't happened for a while. It hasn't happened historically. We are 61% historically.
But what are your thoughts on? Let's just. I've digressed, and I'm sorry for that. And
I know you're emotional. You're still feeling emotional.
Oh yeah.
Accepted, Kev.
Huh?
Yeah.
I thought we'd take this into Tuesday, but clearly you should have seen this guy on Saturday night.
But listen, Kev, bottom line is...
And you know, for 1 or 2,000 rand makes my life. And this is with the Muppets. Some Muppets celebrate when I lose. And it's like, fuck. Yeah. How do you feel now? Well, about 1,000 rand later, and congratulations, All Blacks. Yeah. But you know.
But was it 1,000 rand or 100,000 rand?
No, it was only a small bit. But your thoughts on Marks and Kitsoff should have started that game?
Zels?
Look, bottom line is, if the Boks weren't caught up in the whole bomb squad mantra, if they treated this like a World Cup final, they would have started Marks. They probably would have started Kitsoff or maybe Trevor Nyakani, I don't know. And they would have won this game. Easily.
Well,
easily.
You know, I'll never underestimate a wounded animal again.
Are we still talking rugby, Kev?
I don't know what I'm talking. So, let me ask a question, guys.
Okay.
And this is a serious question, as idiotic as I am at times. Is this a victory? Is this a Pyrrhic victory for the All Blacks? And is this a good loss for the Boks in terms of experience and learning something from it?
Jesus, we're having a lot of good losses at the moment. 3 from 5 at home. Good thing to lose against Wales. Good thing to lose at Ellis Park. I just thought it ripped a bit of that mystique away from the World Cup Boks. That Ireland went back-to-back and made a statement. We needed to go back-to-back and make a statement. And then it's France, Ireland, South Africa are the 3 front runners with England in the peripheral. Yeah. So,
well, New Zealand would have been in national mourning. It would have been, you know, and I think I'll say why it's a false dawn for New Zealand, because you're going to keep the same guy that has got them at one of the lowest points in their rugby. He's safe. He's probably safe now to the World Cup, and so I'm happy with that. I'm happy that Foster's going to, you know, be sailing that ship into icebergs during the next period.
But the thing is, sport is a crazy thing, eh? A player loses confidence, he doesn't feel he can catch a ball. Yeah. He gets a bit of confidence, and he can't. It's like a number 11 in cricket, who doesn't get out in the first 10 minutes, believes they can bat. So I think New Zealand will take serious amounts from that game in terms of self-belief. Yeah. Because their thing, and I read some of their leading journalists who were saying Foster must still go. But what this proved is they got the cattle. They've got the players. Where we were doubting they had the players. Did they have a 6? Frizzell answered some questions. Do they have 2 young scrummaging props, not ball-playing props? Yes, because they went out at Ellis Park and they played and they fronted. Do they have a 10 who can control the game with the packets parity? Yes. Yep. Now they've got a good scrum coach in. Do they bring Joe Smith, who's proving to be a decent selector in terms of what he wants to bring? Do they then manage the Foster element there, and now the players are playing for him? Or do they bring Scott Robinson, who will keep James Ryan and potentially keep the rest? So I just felt that it was the game where they would have not had an answer had they left. Even by a 1-point defeat, it would have been brave. And now it's like, does this Boks team back up? And since the World Cup, they haven't. And we play France and Ireland and France on our first 2 matches in the end of year tour, then Italy and England. That becomes a very important World Cup doubleheader, because that's a semi-final final, and we have to back it up. What I love about 3 test series is at the end of the third one, you normally know who the better team is. And I would love to have had a third one here now. And,
Absolutely.
And we would then have come out and played with that passion and played with the hurt, because South African Springboks just don't want to be the favourites.
Yeah, I understand this is the championship, but I just don't understand 2 test series. I know it's the context of the championship, but you're right. Everybody wants to know who is the better team, and I think right now we're both wondering who it is. And maybe New Zealand aren't as bad as they are, and maybe South Africa aren't as good as they are. But you know who threw the cat in amongst the pigeons on the weekend? Is those bloody Argentinians who hammered the Australia. It's the first time in the championship's history that you have 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. You got 4 teams with the same records. Never happened before. And I don't know just how good that victory is for Argentina and how bad that loss was for Australia in terms of, I know they had a bit of a weakened side, but geez, the Argentinians absolutely hammered them. And Argentina also fronted up against Scotland and looked decent there. So are we seeing a reemergence of a decent Argentinian side? Because they're on the other side of the pool, and they're going to have a much easier run-in than a France, Ireland, Wales, France, Ireland, South Africa, or New Zealand. You know, so they could cruise to the semi-finals and be in the finals of a World Cup.
They did play the Australian 4th side, didn't they?
I was going to say, they are missing a ton of players. Yeah. And they are at home. And they've got some great players in Argentina.
They look good.
And Checker will bring out the mongrel in anybody.
It was nice to see them get a good win. It was nice to have...
Checker must have been over the moon.
Tap dancing, mate.
He said he was a bit
impersonating
confusing, he said.
Confusing, eh? I think he's just taking the mickey.
Because he was singing the Australian anthem and singing the Argentina anthem. And I'm sure
he was, mate.
Then he's a snowflake. Forget about him.
What's confusing was the first time he wasn't knocking the door down with his fist. But great win for them. They now go to Christchurch and they play the All Blacks. We go to Australia. And again, I don't understand why Australia didn't stick us back in Brisbane, where we won once in 28 years for 2 tests.
Maybe they felt sorry for us like we felt sorry for the All Blacks.
They put us in Adelaide, where they've never played before.
Oh, they're good blokes.
And then Sydney. And so it's, again, I expect us to pump them in Adelaide and struggle in Sydney, which would be true.
Exactly.
Don't write off a wounded animal. Don't write off a wounded wallaby team. I mean,
a little Jerry.
I'll tell you this. What the Wallabies would have taken out of that game is that you can unlock this Bok defence. As soon as the All Blacks got over it or round it, the Boks reacted in a way that the Wallabies would have taken.
Wallabies saw that in that second test when they won 31-17. They scored 4 tries and 3 quick ones. It was watching a repeat of that.
Yeah.
We became disjointed. We relied on our maul to get back into that game. But they did unlock us quite comfortably. They're the only team who's been able to do that.
Yeah.
England unlocked us at Twickenham early on, playing with a lot of width as well and variation. And then kind of our forwards got on top of them. What happened at Ellis Park is we never got on top of them.
I went against my very rule of betting, which is never bet against a team that leaves everything out on the field, like the Boks did in Umbabella, Umbabella Stadium. I just feel that, coming to the Ellis Park, which is the one stadium that you should expect them to win by more, even in the show last week, I showed a bit more humility than I did in the week before, and said that I had a gut feeling. And that gut feeling to me was the rule 105 of betting. Don't bet on a team that's left everything out on the field and has another big game the following week, because there's always a letdown.
I hear you on that, but for the first time I thought... I am, but for the first time I thought, let's not betray that gut feeling because of our own insecurities and paranoia. I thought this team was good enough to go beat them again.
But it wasn't the same team. But it wasn't the same team, Mark. And that's the thing, is like when you look at it now...
Guys really let me down, South Africa.
Listen, then we've got the wrong guys. If you can't pick yourself up like that, then we've got the wrong guys. For the All Blacks, come on.
Okay, well, when's the next week? The week after this weekend?
Well, the unfortunate thing is we don't play the All Blacks in South Africa next year. We're down to play them in 2024, and with the Rugby Championship schedule, it may be the last time we play them here for a while. Yeah. And I just felt this is how we had to close that chapter at Ellis Park.
And depending on what's happening in the World Cup, Mark, or in terms of the strategy in 24, we may not send a full-strength side there.
Yeah, well, it depends on who's coaching. If it's Jake or Dava, we'll be sending someone there. But yeah, I'm disappointed that we lost that game because we were good enough to win it
easily.
And it's again no disrespect to New Zealand. It's a compliment to the Springboks that we had this expectation of them. Yeah. And so when people say 1-1 at home against the All Blacks, well, I'll take that. Not against that side. And we need to break that mold of saying it's good enough to lose one, win one, lose one, win one. We have a 61% historical win record. We have a 59% since the World Cup. If we want to talk about great teams, we can be great World Cup winners, or we can be a great team. To be a great team, you've got to be winning 85% plus of your games and throwing a World Cup into that
along
as
the
well.
way.
A very interesting thing that I just want to chat to Zels about. You wrote a great column on SA Rugby. If you look at New Zealand 2011, moving to 2015, and they defended it, but only 7 of the players transferred into their positions over 4 years.
Yeah.
The number with the Springboks at the moment?
Yeah, I think we're at 18 and 13 will start. So 18 of the guys that were in the matchday squad of the 2019 Rugby World Cup final, Russie would pick them today in the 2023 final, and 13 of those guys would start in the same positions. Yeah. Which is a hell of a, I mean, it's almost double what the All Blacks had. And I mean, listen, we all agree, cohesion, continuity, you've got to have it, but at some point you've also got to transition from guys that are in the twilight of their career to the guys that are going to be in their prime.
It would be interesting to look at every team that's won the World Cup and see what their prior World Cup transition was.
Yeah. But I mean, the All Blacks obviously went back to back, so that was the 2011, 2015.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd still find some sort of pattern, maybe.
Yeah. Well, they say older teams win World Cups, but the experience then, if you go back historically, you look at the 1995 World Cup, Australia did the same thing. They came here with pretty much the same side they won in 91. They had injuries, they were nursing players, players weren't training, then they were playing. They lost the South African opening game, and Robert Andrew kicked them out with a drop goal in the quarterfinal. And they were like, these are still the best players in Australia. But there was a young generation that was coming through that just wasn't given the opportunity.
Boks 2007 went to 2 more World Cups, same thing.
Exactly. So when I look at the transition, they normally say that if you've got 7 blokes in your team with 50 plus tests, you're in a very good space. If you've got 16, you've got an old team. And that youthfulness isn't there, and that energy isn't there. And I just think, I mean, I know why they have such faith in him. But an Ulrich Lowe and a Evan Roos would have just brought mongrel to that occasion, because it's like they've been caged for a while and let them out. And it goes back to what you said earlier. Dwayne Vermeulen only made his test debut in his mid to late 20s because every coach kept on saying he wasn't good enough. He's not a test player. He hasn't got the pace for test rugby. But he was chomping at the bit to get there. But some very, very pedestrian loose forwards were also playing for South Africa at the time. Some exceptional ones, but some pedestrian ones. So it's again when a coach gets it in, I like that player, I don't like that player. And for whatever reasons, Rassie and Jacques haven't picked Evan Roos. They will have their reasons that they've worked with them.
I would like to hear them.
But I know it does shock the Stormers and province management that he hasn't been picked. He was the URC player.
Probably they're shocked, but they're probably happy for now.
Well, they're very happy they've got him back now for the start of the URC. But it's again, the public is also so accepting of, if the coach says that, then that's the way it is. It's his job on the line. But the whole point of our discussion is to debate.
But the thing is, nobody in South, you don't have that culture of journalism where people ask those questions. If they were making those decisions in the UK and coaching England, they would be asked those questions. They don't ever have to front up on those decisions.
But if a guy's winning 9 out of his 10 games, it's very hard to say you're getting it wrong. But when he's winning, he's winning 5 to 6 of his 10 games, he's not getting it right all the time.
Yeah, that's the point of this thing, is that with Dwayne, if they want to back Dwayne over Evan, that's the coach's prerogative, and you've got to back the coach to do that. But then you have to be successful. You can't. The guy that you pick can't be getting knocked down and look like he's 42. He's got to perform, and you can't put him in a position where he looks like that in arguably the biggest game of the season.
No, and it would be nice to hear from Rassie to explain, or Jacques, why they're not taking this young lad on tour, because he's had a phenomenal season. But anyway, guys, I think every millennial has fallen asleep now. most snowflakes left about 35 minutes ago.
10 p.m., Kev.
Somewhere in the world. And we don't have to talk about New Zealand and South Africa
Exactly,
for a
cool.
year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the real rivalry.
Well done,
Australia
New Zealand.
and South Africa. Because we're pretty even on like the splits.
Yeah.
Are playing each other since we came back in '92.
Look, it's a great rivalry. To you All Black fans who've been sticking by a team, well done. And to the Boks, we need some serious introspection. Guys, thanks for coming in. We always appreciate it.
Thanks.
And thanks for supporting the Boks when it's not
Come
well.
the Boks. Of course. Guys, thanks, sir.